Communication is the act of transferring information, which is the message, from the sender to the receiver. Emotions is the medium used to communicate, and also location can affect the transmission of the message. Context in communication simply means the circumstances in which communication takes place. Context has the ability to influence what is said and how it is said. There are different types of context in communication, which are intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, small group communication, organizational communication, public or rhetorical communication, mass communication, and cultural communication.
First to discuss is the intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal communication can be defined as communication with oneself, and that may include self-talk, acts of imagination and visualization, and even recall and memory. Example of this is talking to yourself in the mirror or saying, "I can do it" to yourself. In this example, the speaker and listener are one and the same, and that is you.
Next, we have interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is a kind of communication in which people communicate their feelings, ideas, emotions, and information face-to-face to each other. It can be in verbal or non-verbal form. Example, Jay texts Mary, "I am going to mall this Saturday. Are you going with me?" When they were in class and Mary replied texting, "I am in." Here, Jay serves as the sender and Mary as the receiver. The mobile phone represents the channel to encode and decode the message. Noise refers to any sort of distortion caused to the message while it is sent. Lastly, "I am in" is the feedback or the response of Mary to Jay. For non-verbal form, sign language is used for many members of the deaf community. The sender uses sign language to communicate to the audience.
Next is the small group communication. Group communication is an extension of interpersonal communication where more than two individuals are involved in exchanging ideas, skills, and interest. Besides, imbalances in status, skills, and goals may distort the process and the outcome sharply. One of its examples is group study, where a small group of students gather together to share their learnings and each of them communicate effectively. Another example is a board meeting, where stakeholders would gather in the meeting room to discuss business-related topics.
Fourth one, we have organizational communication. We define organizational communication as the sending and receiving of messages among interrelated individuals within a particular environment or setting to achieve individual and common goals. Organizational communication largely focuses on building relationships and interacting with internal organizational members and interested external publics. Example, in the business world, manager or other leaders incorporate organizational theory into the workplace to encourage teamwork, resolve conflicts, and improve internal and external business relationships. In other words, the manager often acts as a liaison between other people or groups to reach a common ground. For external organizational communication include interacting with the public, as in customer service, working with local organizations, fundraising, and organizing public relations campaign. Example of this is the Rotary Club of Valencia City, which is a non-government organization that aims to help the community. Different groups have different characteristics, serve different purposes, and can lead to positive, neutral, or negative experiences.
Next is the public and rhetorical communication. Rhetoric and public communication analyzes communication operation in public fora, including politics, popular culture, social movements, and the courts. Its theoretical and critical perspectives range from classically grounded argumentation, persuasion, and traditional public address to postmodern and postmodern approaches consistent with recent developments in media technology, as well as in feminism, cultural and critical theories. Example of this is advertisement, where the speaker influence the audience and make them buy the product. Another representation of this kind of communication is political campaign. In this matter, the politician will persuade and convince the audience to vote for him.
Next on the list we have mass communication. Little John and Fast define mass communication as the process whereby media organizations produce and transmit messages to large publics and the process by which those messages are sought, used, understood, and influenced by the audience. To simplify, mass communication is the public transfer of messages through media or technology-driven channels to a large number of recipients from an entity, usually involving some types of cost or fee for the users. An example of this is posting on social media and news report. In these examples, the messages is delivered into a large scale of audiences. In disseminating the information, one must meet its functions, which are surveillance, correlation, cultural transmission, and entertainment. In many ways, the four functions of mass communication are still relevant and transferable to contemporary media.
For the last context of communication is the cultural communication. Cultural relativism is the view that cultures are merely different, not deficient, and each other culture's norms and practices should be assessed only from the perspective of the culture itself, not by standards embraced by another culture. Cultural relativism is the moral and ethical way to look at different cultures. Part of this type of communication is the United Nations, which remains the one place on earth where all the world's nations can gather together, discuss common problems, and find shared solutions that benefit all of humanity. Another example of this is the overseas Filipino workers who go abroad to find job. The cultural relativation or communication happens when they are interacting with people with different culture. Cultural relativism emphasizes the ethnocentrism, which is the belief that one's culture is superior to everyone else, should not be forced upon cultures, and cultures should remain unprejudiced towards each other. So to end the discussion, context is everything. It shapes the meaning in all communication. Without context, you can't communicate effectively. When your message is delivered in one context but received in another, it likely leads to miscommunication. That's why it is important to us to learn the context of communication for us to be able to communicate effectively with each other.